You have no idea how loudly heaven applauded you this morning, how shocking it is in the spirit realm that while you were questioning yourself, God was secretly celebrating you, because while you saw only another tired day, He saw a holy victory that hell hoped you would never recognize, and this is your gentle but serious warning. Do not treat lightly what God has stamped with honor, because the steps you thought were small, inconsistent, or insignificant were actually echoing through eternity. In a way your emotions have not caught up to yet. You woke up carrying burdens no one fully understood, with a heart that has been stretched, bruised, and misunderstood, and yet somewhere between the alarm and the first quiet thoughts, you chose Him again. You chose not to respond the way your flesh wanted. You chose not to run back to the old coping mechanisms. You chose to hold your tongue when you could have cut someone down. You chose to pray instead of exploding. You chose restraint instead of revenge, humility instead of ego, and God saw every micro-decision, every whispered, "Lord help me," every silent turning of your heart in His direction. Just like Psalm 56 verse 8 says He collects every tear, He also records every hidden yes, and this morning He is letting you know, I am very proud of you. You don't feel worthy of that sentence because you know your flaws better than anyone. You replay mistakes. You see the times you snapped, scrolled too long, overthought, doubted, and shut down. So when heaven calls this day a victory, your first instinct is to argue with it. But Romans 8 verse 28 doesn't say all perfect days work together for good. It says all things. Meaning God is weaving your clumsy steps, your shaky prayers, your half-awake obedience into a story that carries more weight than you realize, and while you've been focused on the areas where you think you failed, God has been focused on the places where you refuse to quit. Some of the hardest battles you fought never made it into a conversation. You cried in bathrooms, in cars, in your bed at 2 a.m., wiped the tears, washed your face, answered messages, went to work, smiled, laughed, functioned, and people saw, fine. But heaven saw warfare. They saw you holding yourself together when you felt like collapsing. They saw you bite your lip when you wanted to scream, saw you swipe away that notification. Ignore that old temptation, close that tab, delete that draft. Walk away from that argument. And in those apparently quiet seconds, you were waging a war for your destiny that no one else clapped for. So God is clapping for you now. You thought nothing special happened this morning, but spiritually you made decisions that broke patterns, decisions that weakened the grip of old chains, decisions that proved your heart is slowly, steadily lining up with the heart of God, even when your emotions are late to the celebration, and this is the shocking truth. You grew more in seasons you called failure than in seasons you called success. James 1 verses 3-4 says, the testing of your faith produces patience, so that you become complete and lacking nothing. And the testing did not happen only on crisis days. It happened on ordinary mornings like this one, when nobody was watching you choose to stay kind, stay soft, stay believing. You have secretly been treating yourself like a disappointment, like someone always behind, like someone who should be further by now, and while you muttered those accusations under your breath, heaven was recording the opposite. Your faith did not grow only when you felt God. It grew when you didn't feel Him and kept talking anyway, when you opened your Bible and it felt dry but you still opened it, when you whispered, I trust you, while your stomach was tight, when you went to bed still, confused but refused to let go of His hand. And Hebrews 11 verse 6 whispers into that reality that He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. Not those who perfectly feel Him, but those who keep seeking through numbness, fog, questions, and silence. If you could see what the angels saw in your last valley, you would be shocked at how many times you almost collapsed but didn't, how many times your mind screamed, what's the point? And yet you still pressed play on worship, still tuned into a word, still chose not to agree with the darkest thoughts, and that secret resistance is the mark of someone chosen, because plenty of people love God when He feels close, but few love God when they feel forgotten. You are one of the few. And here's something hidden that you need to let confront you gently. You have walked through fire that could have twisted your character, and you came out more like Christ, not less. You could have let bitterness harden you. You could have let betrayal make you cold. You could have let disappointment convince you to shut down and never care deeply again. But instead you chose to forgive people who never apologized. Chose to love people who couldn't love you back the same way. Chose to help others while your own heart was still healing. And John 13 verse 35 says people will know you are His disciple by your love. which means your quiet, exhausted, bruised love is one of the loudest sermons you've ever preached. It didn't look impressive. It looked like answering a phone call you didn't have energy for, sending a message just to check on someone else, biting back harsh words when your own pain wanted to leak out as poison, restraining yourself from exposing someone when you had receipts, choosing not to talk bad about people who wounded you, and yes, choosing to stay pure in spaces where compromise would have been easy. These are not small things. They are shocking victories that hell hoped you would downplay, because if you ever realize how powerful they are, you will walk differently. Galatians 6 verse 9 warns you not to grow weary in well-doing, promising a harvest if you don't faint, and God is telling you that your well-doing has been far more consistent than you give yourself credit for. You assume your obedience only counts when it feels huge, but He weighs the small yes just as heavily, because your giant tomorrow is built on 1,000 hidden yes today. While you were scandalized by your own weakness, God was captivated by your endurance. You kept getting back up, and every time you rose, when everything in you wanted to stay down, the spiritual realm took notice. Isaiah 43 verse 2 was not poetic filler in your life, it was literal. When you walked through the water, you did not drown. When you went through the fire, it did not burn you. And there were days when emotionally you were sure you were done. And yet here you are, reading this, breathing. Still willing to be corrected, still open enough for God to talk, and that alone is a miracle. What the enemy designed as a final blow turned into a refining fire. You came out not as a ruined version of yourself, but as a wiser, more discerning, more anchored one. And even if you feel more fragile, heaven sees more gold in you than before, because the fire burned away illusions, pride, naive dependencies, false identities, and left you with something rare, a heart that still believes after what it has seen. There is something shocking about your hope. You have had enough reason to walk away from faith, and yet your spirit refuses to surrender fully. After disappointment you still whisper, maybe God will do it a different way. After loss you still quietly believe restoration is possible. After delays you still suspect His timing is wiser than yours. And Romans 8 verses 24 to 25 describes that kind of hope as something we cling to even when we cannot yet see what we are waiting for. Your hope is not denial. It is rebellion against the narrative of darkness that has tried to write your ending. Every time you choose to hope again, heaven leans closer, because that hope means you have not agreed with the lie that it's over, and that refusal to agree with death over your story is why your story is not over. You are secretly more unstoppable than you realize, not because you never feel like quitting, but because something in you refuses to let quitting be the final word. And in all of this, God is not just mildly approving of you, He delights in you. Zephaniah 3 verse 17 paints a shocking picture of a God who rejoices over you with singing, and it is hard for you to imagine heaven singing your name while you are sitting in your room, scrolling, questioning everything, but that is exactly what has been happening. While you put yourself down, heaven has been lifting you up. You keep measuring yourself by your last bad day, your last mistake, your last outburst, your last failure to keep a promise to yourself. But God looks at the entire arc of your story and at the posture of your heart, and He sees someone whose heart keeps turning back toward Him even after wandering, someone whose "I'm sorry" is sincere, whose "Lord, help me" is real, whose "I still want you" rises slowly out of the rubble of disappointment, and He counts that as priceless. You are not random to Him. You are not another name in a crowd. You are someone heaven monitors, protects, invests in, someone whose morning decisions can shift things in the spirit realm more than you realize, and this is a hidden warning. If you keep viewing yourself only through the lens of failure, you will keep living beneath the honor God is placing on your life, and that dishonors what Jesus paid for. It's time to stop arguing with grace. When you chose not to clap back, you honored Him. When you chose to forgive, you honored Him. When you showed kindness in exhaustion, loved in pain, gave when it felt like you had nothing left, you honored Him. When you resisted that secret temptation, that hidden addiction, that familiar pattern, you honored Him. When you read one verse instead of none, you honored Him. When you dragged your tired heart into prayer and simply sat there in silence before Him, you honored Him, and that is why He is proud of you. Not because you executed perfectly, but because in a world that constantly invites you to say no to God, you keep saying yes. Your yes is not loud, but it is heavy. It carries generational weight. It sows into futures you can't see yet. It calls in protection over your house. It writes a different story over your bloodline. It invites breakthroughs your grandchildren may walk in, and while that sounds dramatic, that is how spiritual seeds work. They rarely sprout the same day they're planted, but Galatians 6 verse 9 promises a due season. And God is telling you that your due season is not a vague someday. It is drawn in. The delay has not meant denial. It has meant deepening. And while you were complaining about how long it's taking, He was expanding your capacity to carry what you're asking for so that when the door finally opens, it doesn't crush you. Every unnoticed, uncelebrated choice for righteousness has been building an invisible infrastructure under your destiny. You may not see the beams and supports yet, but heaven does, and God will not waste that construction. He is already planning how to reveal publicly what He has been applauding privately. So here is the challenge woven into the comfort. Stop walking like someone barely tolerated. Stop speaking about yourself like someone God is enduring instead of enjoying. Stop letting the enemy narrate your story to you as if his commentary has more authority than God's word. Stop replaying your worst moments as if they nullify every moment you chose God in the dark. Stop agreeing with the idea that you are too behind, too broken, or too inconsistent to carry glory. You have proof that God is with you. You're still here, still reading, still reachable, still correctable, and a heart that can still be corrected is a heart God can still elevate. He resists the proud but gives grace to the humble, and the fact that you feel unworthy of His pride is actually a sign of the humility that makes you a candidate for it. So the next time the enemy whispers that you are failing, remember this morning, remember the secret victories heaven celebrated, remember Psalm 56 verse 8, James 1 verses 3 to 4, Romans 8 verse 28, Hebrews 11 verse 6, Zephaniah 3 verse 17. Remember that heaven is not neutral about you. Heaven is cheering loudly, and the only agreement missing has been yours. Therefore, walk from this moment as someone dangerously aware that God is truly, deeply proud of you. Let your shoulders come up, let your head lift, let your steps reflect. The shocking truth that you are not a barely hanging on believer but a chosen one in training, and refuse to go back to the version of you that secretly believed you were a disappointment to the very God who has been applauding your hidden obedience all along.